Good morning and welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. My name's Diane Alcorn and I am the Membership and Engagement Coordinator here. If this is your first time visiting with us, welcome. We're glad you took the time to join us here. If you'd like more information about our church and our worship community, please feel free and send me an email. In the meantime, again, welcome. We're so glad you took the time to join us.
Welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church, a spiritual community whose hope is audacious and whose vision is for a more equitable and just world for all. I'm Reverend Anthony McCarr, Senior Minister of this wonderful community, and joining me this morning are Dave Blazer, Music Director, Megan Ross, Director of Religious Education and Engagement, Jeff Modulewski, Worship Associate, Larry Wise, Christine Salanti, and Michael Hockman, who are our wonderful tech folks, making this live stream possible. Together, we are pleased to invite you into this space which is connecting people all over Cleveland and all over the world. Often the world is not so welcoming like this welcoming community. Often the values of the world are neither loving nor just. So may this worship hour be one in which we are fed by a wisdom and a passion that remind us that life does not have to be that way, that there exists a larger love in every human heart, urging us on to what is better. Let that spirit stir in our midst today. May each of us in some way feel touched by that transforming power. A special welcome to you if you are a newcomer to our community. Gay or straight, cisgender or transgender, black, brown, or white, you are welcome. Our West Shore regulars would love to greet you, and we'll do that if you indicate on the Facebook chat that you are new or relatively new. If you happen to have any questions and would like to chat with a live person, West Shore's Member and Engagement Coordinator, Diane Alcorn, would love to reach out. Diane's email address is being added to your Facebook chat as we speak. We have a couple of announcements now for you from Megan.
Good morning. Today begins our Guest at Your Table program. Last week you saw a video explaining what the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee does. And this week we'll also be seeing a video that shares a little bit about how the UUSC partners with organizations all around the world to help bring justice and peace. The way that the Guest at Your Table program works is each family will take a box home, and you can get those by stopping by here at the church and picking them up in the bin by the east entrance. Put it on your dining room table or some other place that your family gathers, and use it to start conversations about justice around the world. As you're able, drop some money in the box each time you talk. At the end of our campaign, We will combine all of the coins from all of the houses together into one big donation from West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church to the UUSC. The video you're about to see shares just one story of one organization the UUSC helps. I hope you'll watch and join our program this year. Thank you.
UUSC is an 80-year-old international human rights organization grounded in the principles of Unitarian Universalism and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
UUSC partners with over 50 locally led grassroots organizations around the world to advance human rights.
We work with communities affected by natural disasters and humanitarian crises, including ethnic minorities facing a campaign of genocide in Burma.
We partner with First Indigenous peoples to advance their right to self-determination in systematically addressing the loss of their homes, their livelihoods, and their cultures due to the impacts of climate change.
And we support the right to safety, dignity, and justice for Central Americans in Central America, along the migration route, and in the United States.
We can only do this work because of the support of individuals and congregations like you. Please join us.
Thank you, Megan. A couple of announcements I'd like to make include, first of all, news about our annual auction. It is almost here. Next Saturday, November 14th, 6 p.m., you can still purchase tickets, which will allow you to access both the silent and live portions of the event. There are so many cool things available. You got to check this out. And you also don't want to miss out on the 50-50 raffle. The total purse is almost $4,000. This is so fun. Hope to see you next Saturday at our auction. Come join us. My final announcement is to remind people about conversations that are happening about the new organizational plan for West Shore that is going into effect. This Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom, I'll be hosting a conversation with any and all people involved in the area of worship, music, and the arts. An email invitation has already gone out to you. If you are involved in this area somehow and you have not received an invitation yet, please contact Debbie Elliott in the office and she'll get that to you. Each program council will have its own conversation. For more on this, please read the larger announcement in this month's Shorelines. Once again, welcome to this new day. Every week we light our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. It is a beautiful reminder that no matter how many jarring events might happen over the course of the week, the gathered community that is West Shore is a source of stability and meaning, and we can depend on it. In that spirit, we now say our chalice lighting words, which come to us from a great soul, Maya Angelou. This is our chalice. In many separate rooms, we light one flame, flame of passion, flame of compassion, flame of humor, flame of style. We do not accept merely surviving. Let our mission be to thrive. Together in spirit, we are one. And now let us testify to the unity of that spirit by saying together our unison affirmation words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia y el servicio su ley. Este es nuestro magnífico convenio, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. So may it be. And now we turn to our time of greeting. We greet each other in the midst of our joys and our struggles. And this week has been no different than any of the others. But there was this one thing that happened this past week, which is historic in nature. The election of our 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden, together with America's first ever female Vice President, Kamala Harris. Historic. I'll have more to say about this in my sermon. For now, I invite us into the wisdom and the beauty of Maya Angelou's poem, On the Pulse of Morning. Listen to these words. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, and if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking, for you give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it into the palms of your hands, mold it into the shape of your most private need, sculpt it into the image of your most public self. Lift up your hearts. Each new day holds new chances for new beginnings. Do not be wedded forever to fear, yoked eternally to brutishness. The horizon leans forward, offering you space to place new steps of change. May it be so. Lift your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Lift up your hearts. Lift up your hearts. And now we turn to a moment of sharing names and news that people have asked to be shared. Among the West Shore family, we have some birthdays to lift up. Jameson's birthday was last Sunday. Emmett's was this past Wednesday. Celeste's was this past Thursday. Nella's is today. And Zachary's is tomorrow. Happy birthday to these children of our West Shore community. Let each of us now say the names of people whom we are holding in our thoughts and prayers this morning, people in our West Shore community, people beyond. Wherever you happen to be, say into the space of your room these names. And you may even type this name into our West Shore Facebook chat if you like. I'll pause for a moment as we do this. This has been our greeting time when we are called out of the 24/7 ordinary world into a time of peace and nurturance and wisdom. We are holding each other close in the spirit of life. And now, let us sing this hymn together. Spirit of Life, number 121. We'll sing it twice.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stories of compassion. Oh, in the wind, my blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice, proofs hold us close, wings set us free, Spirit of life, come to us, come to us.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Mogileski, and I am proud to be a worship associate here at West Shore. While I haven't always considered or been aware of all of my identities for all of my life, one area that I've always felt firmly planted was in the middle class. Whether it was growing up in Strongsville and Seven Hills in relative comfort, or having some time struggling in my 20s and in my 30s, I've never felt that I lost that. Middle class was a comforting identity for me. But I also never really considered all of the things that being middle class meant for me and what went along with that. Being middle class meant never growing up worrying about having a roof over my head or food to eat. Being middle class now means constantly worrying that I'm not doing a good enough job providing a great life for my kids. Being middle class meant never ever crossing the bridge to the east side of town. Being middle class for me now means intentionally looking for ways to keep my kids from growing up in the type of bubble that I grew up in. Being middle class meant growing up hearing that everyone is responsible for their own success. And being middle class meant hearing how fair play was the most important thing and that anyone who skirts the rules doesn't deserve respect. Being middle class meant growing up not knowing that not everyone had the same opportunities and experiences that I had. Being middle class also meant growing up not knowing that some people had tremendous opportunities that I would never see. Being middle class means constantly judging myself and comparing myself to others around me. Being middle class means believing that the American dream still applies to me, no matter the reality of my current circumstances. Being middle class meant being put on a track early in life and being heavily discouraged from deviating from that track. High school to college to marriage to buying a house and having kids. Falling off that track meant failure. Even if staying on that track meant taking out loans or feeling rushed into certain life events, you did it anyways. Being middle class meant always seeing people that looked like me, talked like me, and thought like me. It meant not seeing differences from me in media. Being middle class means not being aware of privilege and not having to recognize or be responsible for the privilege that I hold. Being middle class means that while I might not always feel that the government is working for me, I don't feel that the government is actively against me. Being middle class meant growing up and not paying attention to elections. And being middle class meant that no matter what my situation was, I would always be able to figure it out and get by. When I think of who I am, I don't think of middle class very often. But I don't know that there's a single identity that I hold that has a greater impact on where I am today. I think about the lessons I learned that came from being middle class and how the values of this church often seem in opposition to those lessons. I want to continue to have a middle class life. I want my kids to have that life. But we're at West Shore because I also want to teach my kids different values from the ones that I learned. Values of love and respect for everyone, of community, of compassion, and the interconnectedness of us all. These are the UU values that I want to turn into middle class values. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. As we turn now to today's offering, I want to bring awareness to what West Shore does with your money. Here's a dollar bill. Let this represent your annual pledge, and in fact, any money that you happen to give to this community. I want us to see through this dollar bill to the sorts of things that it's going to, the kinds of positive change happening in our world. I could go down the budget line of expenses, line by line, and soon you'll be able to do that yourself when we post the annual budget on the website and send it out to everyone. But here, I want to get to the heart of it all, the heart of the matter. The heart of it all is your money is being put into service to loving kindness. Your money is being put into service to making a positive difference. That loving kindness and making a positive difference, it happens to West Shore members and friends, and it also happens to folks beyond our community. Wherever it happens, it happens. And that's why we exist to begin with. That is why we organize this congregation. That is why we invest in this congregation. This congregation is a rallying point for positive change. And you've already heard about Guest at Your Table a moment ago. And I want to tell you something about yet another way in which we are a rallying point, something we're rallying people around. You might have seen this announcement in this past Friday's weekly e-news with the title, "Help Us Help the Homeless." Imagine, says the article, wearing the same underwear for weeks without being able to wash them. Imagine being out in the cold without hat or gloves to wear. It may be difficult for you to imagine, but it's an everyday occurrence for many people who live on the street. They do not have access to clean clothing, nor do they have the proper clothing to protect them from the weather. From Sunday, November 8th until November 22nd, starting today, the Social Action Committee will be collecting white t-shirts, underwear, hats, and gloves for men and women. The majority of the people needing these items are men with sizes large, extra large, and extra, extra large, and boxer briefs are preferred. We will also be collecting new or gently used bath towels so people will be able to use the shower facilities at Urban Hope. Hygiene items like soap, toothbrushes, toothpaste, and deodorant are also needed. You can leave all donations in a box labeled Urban Hope at the church doors near the parking lot. All items that are collected will be distributed at Urban Hope, the only UU presence in the inner city. Please be generous and help us provide these very important items. If you want to help but prefer not to shop, checks made out to Urban Hope can be sent to West Shore, or you can donate using Realm. The cold weather is starting already, and your help can make a difference. If you have any questions about this collection, please contact Gloria Beamer. Today, Kathy Ross is going to be at the east entrance of the church, starting at 11:15 a.m. all the way to 1 o'clock to receive donations. And that's the announcement. This is the most recent loving kindness initiative that we're wanting to rally people around. And I hope you find a way to participate. Above all, I hope you give generously to West Shore to keep this community strong. The world needs this particular rallying point. So much depends on keeping it strong. Your financial gifts make that possible. Now, please consider texting a one-time gift to West Shore. Instructions for how to do that will appear on your screen. Our offertory today is the prayer by Carol Bayer Sager and David Foster, performed by our own Dave Blaser. let us now take this musical prayer and extend it into the prayer of our very own hearts and minds. Take a deep breath in and breathe out fully. Take another breath in. Wherever we happen to be, whatever our circumstances, let the tension drain away. Close your eyes if you wish. Follow the sound of my voice. Let this moment be a moment of peace and beauty. Let it be a moment of aliveness. Listen again to Maya Angelou's words. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, and if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Take this image with you as now we enter into the wise silence. And now, consider this video.
We're in the middle of the longest streak of private sector job creation in history. More than 14 million new jobs, the strongest 2 years of job growth since the 1990s, an unemployment rate cut in half.
He's right. The American economy is clawing its way back from the recession, but something's happening to the middle class. It's shrinking. How's that possible? Let's look at the numbers. And we'll begin with median household income, which over the years has been trailing behind U.S. GDP growth, even falling in some periods. That means that while the U.S. economy grows, not everyone's bank account grows with it. And if we go back to the 1970s, those considered middle-class households were earning around $9,000, which if adjusted to inflation is just over $53,000. Fast forward to the past couple of years, middle-class households are making only $51,759. That's $1,942 less in adjusted dollars. Overall, the number of Americans regarded as middle class has shrunk, from 61% of the population in the 1970s to just under 50% now. Yes, that's because some of the population got richer, but more folks have become poorer, too. Sure, the prices of gadgets like flat-screen TVs and laptops are more affordable than ever, but college tuition, childcare, healthcare, and housing costs are on the rise. The average cost of a house in the United States has increased 5-fold since 1970, which is well over inflation. And childcare for 2 kids generally costs even more than rent. If we break it down simply, the price of a dozen conventional eggs would cost 4.5 times more if it increased as fast as college tuition has over the past 3 decades. So where's the share of money going? It's shifting to the top earners. Upper-income households hold half of the country's wealth, but only account for 3% of the population. And get this, the 20 richest Americans have more money than the bottom half of the American population. That's over 150 million people. Okay, before you completely lose all hope, there is some good news. Median family income rose more from 2014 to 2015 than it had in 17 years. 2015 also brought the largest drop in national poverty in 16 years. And, for the first time ever, more than 90% of Americans finally have health insurance. Steps in the right direction? Yes. But the 45th President of the United States has a big task ahead.
Today's video was from 4 years ago, right after Donald Trump's election as the 45th President of the United States. 4 years later, here we are. It's been a grueling week, perfectly fitting for the grueling kind of year this has already been. It feels like the entire country has been waiting for biopsy results, said one wag in the middle of this week. Above all, for people of the liberal persuasion, right now, it's a very painful time, even as there is joy and literal dancing in the streets in response to Joe Biden being elected as the 46th President of these United States. The reason for the pain is because the vote was so very close. It shouldn't be this close, says writer Don Winslow. Not after caging children, not after selling out soldiers, not after 230,000 people dead, not after 4 years of breaking every law on the books. It should not be so close. My colleague, the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison, who is transgender, put it like this: the hardest thing is seeing that millions of people voted for someone who is an openly mocking, disrespectful, insatiably egomaniacal, and hateful person. The second hardest thing is knowing that I, and so many I love, will be in the direct line of his cruelty. So many will suffer and die, and so many people don't care. I read a post late last night that dismissed the coronavirus because it had only a 1% death rate. That's 3.28 million deaths in the U.S. alone. But no big deal to this person who berated everyone who wore a mask or took precautions. Says another colleague, trying to love all my neighbors in this country, knowing that half of them voted for more of what we've got right now, trying to see that spark of the divine in everyone today. People of the liberal persuasion, even plenty of conservative Republicans who can't stomach Trump, wanted to see a resounding coast-to-coast repudiation of where this country is going, and it did not happen. It didn't. Do you feel pain about this too? I do, absolutely. I want to understand why it happened. I want to understand, first of all, how some people could vote for Trump and think their vote could just be about taxes or just some other isolated issue, that somehow their vote wouldn't amount to affirming the entirety of Trump's egregiousness, which they will tell you that they do not approve of, but they vote for him anyhow. Somehow they don't see that a vote for even the smallest part of Trump is, practically speaking, a vote for all of Trump, and enables the full spectrum of his noxiousness to continue unchecked. Somehow they don't see that. Somehow they think that we can disagree and still be friends, even though this disagreement really does center around voting for someone who is avowedly racist and misogynist and anti-democratic and anti-science and on and on and on. How can some people not see the problem with this? I want to understand. I also want to understand how people who claim they are all American patriots could vote for Trump, and they do want their vote to be a positive affirmation of the entire Trumpian ethos, even as that means the death of something as all-American as democracy and the sanctity of our vote, so self-contradictory, so irrational. I am desperate to understand. You too? And of course, if you guys were in the sanctuary right now, I'd put my hand to my ear and I'd wait until you said, yes, I want to know. Do you want to know? Yes, I want to know. Today, I want to share with you some of my reflections about something which I think can help us understand, at least a little bit. The full picture is admittedly complicated, of course. One factor that I can't get into here, but which I think is crucial, is the breakdown of commonly held facts. Historian Heather Cox Richardson speaks to this when she talks about the division between those who are living in the fictional world created by generations of right-wing media and those who are living in the real world, the so-called reality-based community. Everyone is afraid. But the scary films running in people's minds depends on which news outlet they happen to follow and what social media they happen to consume. The scary films, therefore, can be very different, and that, to me, is truly scary. How can anyone communicate across such a chasm? How can anyone reason across such a chasm? That's a key problem. But the problem I want to focus on right here and right now is class. In particular, the middle class. Because, as research shows, Trump voters are not primarily poor people, but middle and upper middle class people. In the last election, Trump voters had a median household income of $72,000. That's higher than those folks voting Democratic. Focusing on the middle class is the something which can help us understand. But I want to start with the insight that being middle class is not centrally about how much a person makes financially. The telling fact is that most Americans identify as middle class despite actual earnings. From the Kirwan Institute for the Study of Race and Ethnicity, centered at The Ohio State University, comes this observation, that all but the wealthiest Americans and those who are truly impoverished consider themselves middle class. It is striking that half of those in households with six-figure incomes define themselves as middle class, and that even among those with incomes below $30,000, a third define themselves as middle class and another third as lower middle class. A report from the Middle Class Working Families Task Force, led by then Vice President Biden, back from 2010, agrees. It says it like this: middle-class families are defined by their aspirations more than their incomes. Isn't that interesting? The video from earlier is characteristic of how a lot of people think class is just a matter of income. It's just about the numbers. But it's time to go deeper than just the numbers. Aspirations and beliefs, the stories a person tells about themselves, about others, about the world at large, they're even more central than actual income to a person seeing themselves as middle class. But which aspirations? What beliefs? What stories? My answer is the ones tied up with the American dream. What we heard Jeff so eloquently referred to a moment ago, as in, if you work hard and play by the rules of decency, success is yours. Most Americans identify with the middle class because most Americans still believe in this dream. The dream is part and parcel of the middle class mindset that unifies most Americans from sea to shining sea. Three basic beliefs help make up this mindset. The first is about people and power. that everyone has equal access to the sort of freedom that enables people to overcome obstacles to success. If a person can't bypass obstacles and get to success, well, they must be lazy. Something must be wrong with them. Call this the story of unlimited personal freedom. This immediately leads to the second middle-class belief. There are no insurmountable barriers in society blocking a person's ability to change their life status. There are rather endless possibilities out there, and people just need to work hard to find them out. Call this the story of social fairness, according to which injustice is more about particular situations and particular people rather than oppressive structures and systems which are reproduced over the years, no matter who the particular actors are or the times. Which is why, for the middle-class mindset, a sign like Black Lives Matter is deeply offensive. It runs contrary to the story it tells itself, the middle class tells itself about social fairness. What a middle class point of view demands is that the only sign that people should be displaying is all lives matter. Yet a third middle class belief falls closely on the heels of the first and the second. People are independent agents whose well-being is best served by focusing on themselves and the people they care about. Success is having your own space, your own house, your own car, your own things. You don't have to rely on anyone else or go borrowing anyone else's things. You have enough money for a vacation now and then. You are saving up for retirement so you can continue to remain independent in your golden years. That's success. I will go my way and respect your right to go your way. But if you try to take away my independence, there will be hell to pay. If you try to take away my sense of myself as an independent agent and assume anything about who I am on the basis of maybe race or gender or some kind of group belonging, how dare you? If you try to take away my hard-earned money in service to what somebody calls the common good, if you try to constrain my self-expression in service to what someone calls the well-being of the community, well, I'm going to come up fighting. Call this the story of independence. Don't tread on me, says a classic Revolutionary War flag from hundreds of years ago. The middle class still hangs this flag up high. So, for example, if some governor says you have to wear a mask, the middle class impulse is to gather with your cronies with guns at the state capitol and protest the governor as being egregiously un-American. Yet another example is that the whole world might be bearing the excruciating signs of climate change, extreme weather events, rising sea levels, species extinction, on and on. But don't you dare take away my rights to continue living as I please, consuming as I please. Don't you dare. This is the American dream. To live as one pleases, undisturbed by the needs of the larger community or the world, to be able to work hard and to trust that one's hard work will earn success. This middle-class mentality unites most Americans from sea to shining sea. But it is a dream that is not for everyone. For the wealthy, it's irrelevant. Their wealth makes it possible for them to make up their own rules. Honor and hard work and decency are for so-called suckers. This is language Trump likes to use. And as for the working class poor, the American dream is not even within possibility. That this is so for the working class poor is reflected in their characteristic aspirations and attitudes. Social psychologists have documented that the working class, quote, tend to believe that external, uncontrollable social forces and others' power have greater influence on their lives. Success for them, therefore, depends on how well they can read other people, how they can rely on and be helped and help out others. That's from a 2012 article in the scholarly journal Psychological Review. From a 2010 article in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology comes this related insight. People with less income and education are more generous, trusting, and helpful than their wealthier, more educated counterparts. Unquote. So here's the series of contrasts. The middle class says people have unlimited personal freedom for personal expression in a world that is fair. The working class, on the other hand, experiences a world that is unfair, with lots of oppressive forces that push back against individual expression. So, while middle-class people act as self-focused, independent agents and strive for freedom from outside interference in their affairs, working-class people survive by other focused efforts to build and maintain relationships, to build trust, to build community through generosity. There is a clash of existential storytelling here, in other words, with very practical consequences. Middle-class people tend to behave more selfishly and less empathetically and ethically than working-class people. A 2012 article in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences reports on two studies in which we can glimpse this. Two studies in which observers watching from the street recorded driving behavior over 2 days. In the first study, drivers of high-status vehicles were far more likely than others to cut off other drivers at busy four-way intersections. In the second study, approximately half of the drivers in the highest status vehicles drove illegally through a crosswalk as a pedestrian was waiting to cross, versus none of the lowest status vehicles. One of the scientists that was a part of this study, Dacher Keltner, PhD, draws this conclusion. He says, these findings suggest that cultural context and its resulting mental habits allow people of higher classes to disconnect from others' concerns, to be compassionate. You have to carefully attend to other people, to what they're thinking, to what they're feeling and saying. The wealthy don't do that as well as poor people, not because they don't have these capabilities, but because the context of their lives allows them to disengage, unquote. Dr. Keltner is talking about the relatively wealthy here, middle class and above. The context of their lives allows them to disengage. And here we have it. The explanation for why the millions of middle-class Trump supporters who feel that their vote can just be about isolated issues like taxes, as opposed to a blanket affirmation of Trump's entire hateful ethos. It's to be found in how middle-class culture tends to make people tone deaf towards the harsher realities of collective life, tends to make them self-focused to the point of disengagement. It opens the door to fundamentally good-intentioned people saying that we can disagree and still be friends, even when we are disagreeing about things that lead to people's oppression and a denial of their humanity and right to exist. It opens the door to people who have a spark of the divine within, saying that it is okay to disagree about things like wearing masks, even when COVID-19 anywhere is a threat to all people everywhere. It opens the door to children of God not batting an eye about America having fully withdrawn from the Paris Accord, even when climate change anywhere is a threat to people everywhere. The middle class mentality is one that just has a hard time grasping things like the common good. Oh, it likes the common good for sure. It takes the common good for granted. When the common good takes a nosedive, real pain is felt. But the middle class mentality makes it easy for individuals to step back from owning their part in supporting the common good and to shrug off making sacrifices for its continuance. The implications of the middle class mindset trickle all the way down to something as mundane as a church pledge. It is quintessentially middle class to benefit from a community like this. But when the invitation to financially support this community through pledging goes out, a lot of people don't respond. It's also quintessentially middle class to make excuses about not having enough money to pledge, where, by contrast, in the churches of the working poor, money flows. Money flows because the working poor are who they are. They belong to the sort of social class that understands generosity and counts on community solidarity and embraces self-sacrifice for the common good. I am asking all of us to do better around this. Now, don't mistake me. I see intentional and malicious intent in none of this. None of this. No one is not a child of God. Trump voters who just wanted to make a statement about limited things like taxes really do not mean to be hateful. But there are consequences to having a class identity. Class is a major lens through which people see the world and see themselves and see others. The middle class lens helps a person see some things and to completely miss the boat on other things. And now let's turn to the other issue that begs explanation: how people who claim they are all American patriots can vote for Trump, and they do want their vote to be a positive affirmation of his entire Trumpian ethos, even as that means the death of something as all-American as democracy and the sanctity of the vote. This death, this terrible death, is what we saw the current president of our United States speaking from the sacred space of the White House, urging on this death, the death of democracy, the death of every vote sanctity. Trump has been casting doubt on the democratic process for a long time now, has worked to keep voters from the polls. He enlisted Postmaster General Louis DeJoy to weaken the mail system so ballots would not be delivered on time. But in this sacred, sensitive week, with the election actually underway, he has only ramped up his fake news, falsely asserting election fraud, falsely claiming victory, saying that we should stop counting all the votes, saying that the election is being stolen. Donald Trump Jr. himself tweeted at one point that counting all the votes was akin to America being a banana republic. And that, he says, the best thing for America's future is for his dad to go to total war over this election, to expose all of the fraud, the cheating, the dead or no longer in state voters that has been going on for far too long, unquote. This fake news is chaos. This is what chaos looks like. this is also what it looks like for a member of the class of the very rich to despise the rules of decency the rest of us must follow, which are for suckers, and to make up his own rules, take control of the narrative, lie so often and so fast that the truth is buried under an avalanche. If he doesn't get what he wants, well, inundate the opposition with litigation and lawyers. How in God's name, Buddha's name, Krishna's name, Moses' name, Mother Teresa's name, could any American patriot follow him here to this very place of chaos and subversion of democracy and the creation of something that every other president from George Washington on down has hated: tyrannical rule, kingship? How? This is what I think. Yes, the middle class is centrally about aspirations, but economy is still important. And this is what the middle class is increasingly coming to know: that the equation of work hard plus play by the rules equals success, which is America when it is great, is breaking down. In the news, we constantly read of the shrinking middle class. You already know about that. You're living that. Jeff is living that. I won't rehearse the statistics here. The part that I do want to highlight, though, is the cognitive dissonance in all of it. On the one hand, we are talking about the American dream, which for the middle class is as certain as God, freedom, and apple pie. On the other hand, there is lived reality. There's income that continues to fall behind expenses like housing, college, health care, no matter how hard a person works. The class of the powerful, the oligarchy, they've gamed the economy, and they're getting richer, while the poor are getting poorer, and the middle class is on the decline. But the world is also supposed to be a fair place, right? So, if the middle class is on the decline, doesn't that suggest logically that maybe the middle class is getting lazy, or something's wrong with them? But that can't be right, since the American dream is as certain as God, freedom, and apple pie. And cognitive dissonance, pretzel-like logic, contortions of intellect, shot through and through with intense desperation and fear. To resolve this tension between dream and lived reality, to soothe the underlying desperation and fear, here's what middle-class folks, at least the ones voting for Donald Trump, don't do and do instead. What they don't do is address the real problem. The real problem is how the class of the powerful, the oligarchy class to which Trump belongs, has gamed the system to guarantee that the rich only get richer. For hundreds of years now, this oligarchy class has implemented a strategy of divide and conquer. Racism in America was created 400 plus years ago to ensure that black slaves and indentured servant whites would not combine forces and overthrow the wealthy, oppressive, land-owning class. Today, we have an economic system where most people find themselves in a long line waiting for scarce resources, both the poor and the middle class. And when the poor and the disadvantaged cut in line, when they are allowed to cut in line so that they can be helped, the white middle class is outraged. The white middle class calls them lazy. The white middle class wants more law and order. People in this long economic line start to fight amongst themselves, while the crucial question that is not being asked enough is, who created the line in the first place? Who makes sure that the line stays put? That points to the real problem. Oligarchs like Trump are the swamp. but the real problem stays hidden. So what middle-class Trump supporters do instead, spurred on by all their desperation and all their fear, is give their unconditional loyalty to a leader who says he can make America great again. This leader is decidedly not middle class and will not play by middle-class rules of decency. But his middle-class subjects, no matter how religiously conservative they happen to be, give him pass after pass after pass because his indecency to them is evidence of his power. Indecently, he will lead the country into chaos. Indecently, he will kill democracy. But Trump supporters will let him. They will because the American dream equation of work hard plus play by the rules equals success must be shored up no matter what. And it seems like the things other decent politicians have tried to do in the past have never worked. The Trump-supporting middle class goes all in, all chips in. They bet everything. And in this way, despair is transformed into exhilaration. Fear becomes power. Desperation becomes mania. Make America great again, whatever it takes. What I most want you to see here, West Shore, is the misery underlying this whole terrible thing. Trump is a magnet for people's trauma. He exploits it. He uses it to manage his own personal traumas, of which there are many. That's a huge topic in its own right. All this just makes me so sad. And maybe you too. And now it's time to wrap up. The week has just been grueling. I'm just exhausted, and I know you are too. With Joe Biden and Kamala Harris elected, it is indeed a new day. Dancing in the streets, me too. But the fact that almost 70 million Americans voted for more of what we have seen in the past 4 years is painful. So here we are, trying to love all our neighbors in this country, trying to see the spark of the divine in everyone. When we bring awareness to what it means to be middle class, maybe it's easier to understand where those almost 70 million votes for Donald Trump came from. Healing means, for us and for all, naming the middle class tendency to disengage, together with all the resulting problems, and balancing it with a vision of mutuality and interdependence. Jeff spoke to this too. How our Unitarian Universalist values make all the difference here. They are precious. How our church experience brings a constant reminder that sacrifice for the common good and for community well-being matters. Healing means this, and it also means naming middle-class despair and the desperation driving people to sell their souls to make America great again. Healing means focus on the real problem. Work on the real problem. Drain the swamp really. Don't just swap out one swamp for another swamp. Beloveds, the journey continues on. And we are in this thing together. Amen. And now let us sing our closing hymn, number 347, Gather the Spirit.
Gather the the Spirit harvest the bar. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of His Son. Our trials in this night appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the soul we are laid in store. Nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Now bring your chalice close to extinguish it as I extinguish our chalice here. Hear our words. We extinguish our flames, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we meet again. So remember coffee hour at 11:30, and also that Kathy Ross is going to be here at the east entrance of the church today, starting right now until 1:00 p.m. to receive donations on behalf of the homeless. I will see you at the sermon chat at 12:30 on Zoom. And now the benediction. Can we face our history despite its wrenching pain? Can we lift up our eyes upon a new day breaking? Shall we be wedded forever to fear, yoked eternally to brutishness? Absolutely not. Your love, your passion, your vote has made all the difference. Our Unitarian Universalist love and passion make a difference. The horizon leans forward, offering you and I space to place new steps of change. And we will take these new steps of change together. We will. We will. So may it be. Amen. Amen. Be well, West Shore. Be well. See you again next Sunday.